listening to
That's
That's
High
High
Praise.
Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast.
I am your co-host VH Zest.
I'm your other co-host, Captain Nostalgia. Inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
There's no
So,
real, no other way to introduce this movie.
no, this is 2017's Inconceivable, which is a brilliant name when you really watch the movie. It is a brilliant name. Yeah. So, Josh,
Ah,
you always ask me my first thoughts. I'm not starting. I want your first thoughts on this 2017 straight to DVD Nicolas Cage epic.
burn it.
Burn it. Fair enough.
I don't know what I was expecting of this movie. This movie reminds me of movies I grew up watching with my mom on Lifetime.
Dude, yes. I was gonna say, like, this movie has an audience, but that audience is real specific. And it's
Yeah,
like Lifetime and Hallmark.
the really interesting thing about this is so if you listen to Victims and Villains, you know that I am a huge Showgirls fan.
Right.
Um, and I have the book right here for Showgirls from the Vinegar Syndrome release. I love this, and Gina Gershon is in that movie.
Yeah.
And so they did a documentary a few years ago called "You Don't Know Me," and it's a brilliant documentary. If you haven't seen it, you're a fan of Showgirls or been curious about it or need to give it a second chance, I highly recommend seeking it out. But part of that documentary, they actually talk about Showgirls being like the closing chapter on this uh trilogy of like camp movies that have like basically kept the midnight circuit alive. And I don't remember what the first movie is. I believe it's What Happened to Baby Jane. But the second movie is Faye Dunaway, is Mommy Dearest with Faye Dunaway, who is plays Nicolas Cage's mom in this movie.
Hmm.
Then you have Gina Gershon with Showgirls as being the closing chapter. So I thought the two of these actresses and Nicolas Cage being in this
You had some
movie,
high hopes, or some hope. You had hope.
I had hoped that this movie
Yeah.
was going to be fun. It was going to be overacted.
Sure.
I was 100% here for no. This is like a this is like a a stereotypical Lifetime movie
It is. It
100%.
it truly is. And honestly, like, I will say this to say that, like, I was thinking about this earlier. Like, this movie isn't good. However, comma, this movie has an audience. I think I would even go so far as to say I know people who would probably enjoy this movie. Um, there are Nicolas Cage movies that are worse that I've liked more. There are Nicolas Cage movies that are probably better in some way, shape, or form that I've liked less. Um, but it's something. It's very specific, but it isn't. I don't know. I don't know how to talk about it generally. It's not a very general movie. It feels like if the movie Parasite was bad and on the nose, um, and overacted and a lot of things. But that's the weirdest comparison I can make is Parasite. And if you watch this movie, you kind of get it.
I I love the fact that you compared this to an Oscar winning caliber movie
I
like
know.
Parasite.
To be fair, though, I didn't like Parasite, so take it for what you will.
I yeah, I really think that like I was watching this, I got done with this and I was like, this movie does like really at its core, like it's a fine film. Like there's
Sure.
nothing remarkable about it. This is one of those movies that like I don't know if you like if you remember this or if you like ever saw any of these movies, but there was like this like string or like even trend, I would say, in like
Hmm.
the late 2000s to like early 2010s where you would have an outside woman come into a marriage, try to seduce the husband, wife would get upset, and that was basically the premise of the movie. Or
Yeah.
this second woman was trying to steal said family away, and there was like a whole bunch of they always felt like big budget Lifetime movies to me.
Yeah.
But this movie feels like a movie that's out of time and it belongs in that era. Feels like it comes
Right.
10 years too late.
Right. Yeah, no, that's very, very fair. The movie is definitely like because you have those trends of movies. Nicolas Cage has done a couple of these, but you have like the "You took my loved one, I'm going to kill you now." He's done a couple of those. He's done a couple of the whole like home invasion things where it's like it's not really a horror, but it's scary. That kind of stuff. And this is definitely one of those where it's like it what it could have been in the 90s is like a funny like love triangle movie with like Stephen Baldwin. What it ended up in like the 2000s was, yeah, you're right, like Lifetime's attempt, like cringy attempt at like almost thriller.
Air
Yeah,
quotes.
thriller in air quotes. Thriller closer to Michael Jackson, further from, an actual thriller.
I am like almost curious to see how long this episode is going to go for because this doesn't seem like the right podcast to have this for one. Nicolas Cage is like barely in this movie.
He is. He's barely in this movie. And that's like he has some good parts, but anybody could have done his parts. He wasn't like it was clearly just a role that he took. He just played a husband, for the most part.
Yeah, and I feel like for the most part, like this might end up being very like I don't know, like Nicolas Cage has done movies where he's had less screen time than he
Yeah.
is here, but he's better, and I feel like I
He's
had more to
effective.
say. Yeah,
He's
but if
effective.
I feel like for this one, like we are both cisgendered uh heterosexual men,
That's
and
true.
I just don't feel like we're the audience for this movie.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
this
I
seems
hear
like
you.
a very like this seems like you said, like it's a very niche audience
Yeah.
movie, and this is neither one of us fit that niche.
No, no, we're men first of all, which honestly you could debatably stop there. Um, because this is basically a movie about a woman who cannot bear children herself, so she becomes an egg donor and then begins to I'm going to put this in terms that make the movie seem way cooler. She begins to repossess her property. You know what I'm saying? She goes and like does rescue missions on these kids that were, eggs that she had donated. Again, the concept here is strong. It so could have been even a comedy or like a really intense, like almost slasher, maybe, um, in concept. Like seriously, mother goes to repossess children. Like that could take any form, Josh, for real. But what it ends up being is, yeah, like you were saying, like there basically is this like kind of it's not really a love triangle, but she goes into this family's home, Nick Cage and his wife, who's played by you mentioned her name, Gina something,
Gina
um,
Gershon.
Gina Gershon. And this woman is just really friendly and kind. Their daughters are basically the same age. And she just kind of inserts herself into, I mean, she is invited. It's, yeah, it's not completely, parasitic, but
She
um,
kind of like manipulates her
she
way
does.
in.
At first she doesn't, I don't think, but she eventually she's everything is just a manipulation.
I
Um,
don't know. So like the way that this movie ends, not to cut you off, I
yeah, yeah,
feel like the way this movie ends and like the big reveal of the entire thing is that like she kind of did manipulate herself in because the way that this movie ends made me look at the way this movie begins completely different.
mm, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah, where she was just kind of yeah, that's fair, especially when you consider kind of the one side romantic thing that happens. Yeah, that's very fair. Okay. But basically what happens is she plants herself in this family, manipulates herself her way into this family as we just talked about. And begins to kind of like sort of she's like trying to manipulate their daughter to think that like, oh, I'm your mommy. And she's like, mommy's here, she'll get hurt, and she'll try to comfort the daughter as that, in that position. And um yeah, it just kind of goes from there. Um I don't know. There's not a lot to say. Like this movie's not substantial.
No, it is like the furthest thing from substantial. And like I was like even like anytime we cover a movie on the podcast network and I'm a part of the podcast, I'm always like, what can we bring in terms of mental health? And I don't
Totally.
feel qualified. Like this movie clearly has a mental health journey.
It does.
With like, Gina Gershon's character, it's revealed in the movie that like she is barren. She's not able to actually conceive kids. Their first kid actually came as like a super miracle, for one. For two, like I don't feel qualified to speak on something like that, as I've previously stated earlier this podcast. However, we I did do a podcast with a mutual friend of ours, Kate Webster, about
Yeah.
postpartum depression and mental health. I will link it in the show notes
Oh, did you
below. I
talk about Babadook?
We did not, but we
Oh,
have also done the Babadook episode. So I will link both of those in the show notes below because I feel like those are a lot richer conversations
sure.
for uh anything that we could say about this movie in terms of
Totally.
mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that where it's like I can't put myself in the shoes of someone who cannot conceive. Again, movie is brilliantly titled. Um, and it's the best. I'm gonna keep saying it because it's the best thing I have to say. Um, it's the highest marks I can give this film. I guess it visually looks nice, but I mean, it's not really not a whole lot of cinematography that goes into it. Um, but yeah, like there's not really a lot that we can speak on in that regard. We can't and are not going to try to put ourselves in those shoes. Yeah, but basically, like Gina Gershon's character, yeah, she has finally has a baby, and you find out that she goes through a lot of like drug addiction and things like that to just kind of cope with, the fact that she was barren early on, and that's becomes kind of a point of manipulation later on. And so that's really hard. And we could potentially speak to that to some extent, because I think we've all tried to, even if even in subtle ways, like medicate uh, our mental condition externally,
Yep.
and that's definitely really tough. And Nicolas Cage's character Brian uh, is pretty okay about that, I guess. I don't know. He's just kind of in this movie. It's really not remarkable.
There's not like, and like even every time like he's like they try to like take his character and they're like they show like an ounce of like actual like emotion.
Yeah,
Like they're like surprised. Like there's a moment in there where he's like getting ready to like yell at her, and then like it's revealed that like her and the nanny Katie have been planning a super surprise thing.
yeah,
Like where they like show the painting, and I was like, this just why? Like there you guys did my boy Nick dirty in this movie, but yeah, I agree with you. I think in terms of like one takeaway, like that's a really good thing in terms of like medicating.
yeah,
Um, I think that that's something that, you know, for a long time, I really struggled with that. So like, I escapism has been something that like I've really struggled, and it's
sure,
only been more recently that like I'm like, I need to actually confront this, or like talk to my therapist or talk to my wife and
yeah,
try and figure out a way to kind of break this anxiety or kind of come across the other side of this, whereas like everything from porn to video games to comics to
yeah,
uh anything that like even film, like to kind of escape that. And for Gina Gershon's character it just happened to be pills.
yeah.
um I,
Which is more
I
on the nose. I mean, for
yeah,
this kind of thing, I guess.
yeah, and I feel like too the fact that like she's a doctor, like I mean obviously like you have like easy accessibility to it, but it also
Yeah,
like sets up like like you said, like this movie's not very, it's not very substantial. It puts at like that scene later down the line where like she falls asleep in her car because she's got pills in the smoothie because of Katie. I was like, come on, man. Like
Yeah.
the what? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I thought that was so cheap, and it was just like they just didn't want to commit to like having to handle like her getting in a car accident and then having to explain that or whatever. It was just like it just felt so lazy.
So, trivia fact for you.
Sure.
Let's
I
first
was
trivia
really
fact.
hoping for some trivia in this movie. I only have one tiny piece of trivia.
Do you? It might be this one.
It's probably not, I mean, I don't know. It's trivia for
So,
me, but
so
yeah.
I'm always like keeping an eye open for like trivia for you. Like
Yeah.
I, Benny on the last one. Uh,
Yeah.
so this one is the actual official motion picture debut of Natalie Eva Marie,
Yeah.
who is most
Was a
famously
WWE wrestler. Yeah.
WWE
Yep.
diva.
Yeah.
So my question about this one is that scene where her and Katie like get caught having sex. Like it's so weird because like they try and make it like it's supposed to be this like pivotal part. It's like,
Yeah.
what I just did you like take like was there actually any reason to have it there, or is it like is this movie just kind of like embracing an
No,
LGBT relationship just for the sake of embracing it?
honestly, I think it was that. I think it was tokenism at best, which is not a great thing, but I think it was tokenism at best. I think at its worst, it was just like, let's see if we can make this, sexual without involving the dad.
It's such a strange like narrative choice, and then
Yeah.
like later down the line to like kind of like set her character up to fail. Like again, this movie did her like dirty. Like this is
Yeah.
a terrible movie to like make your debut in because like you're you're essentially like presented as like a really close friend
Yeah.
to Gershon's character,
Yep.
and then like you somehow turn lover, which is never like really explained. I think it's just kind of like they're like, what would be cool?
Yeah.
Lesbians.
And it doesn't make sense too, because it's like uh it's implied early on that her character has a husband. Very implied.
Oh,
And then that
Linda?
yes.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yes, because like they ask wait no they ask Katie's character, they ask like about like, oh, are you married or do you have a husband? And she's like, no. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry or whatever. And that like to me, that implied because there was the three of them there, that implied that Linda's character wasn't single, had a husband.
That's a good way to look at it. And like,
Yeah,
I also just want to go on the record, like, not to say like, hope that my comments on like this portion of the film don't come across as like homophobic. That's not my
sure.
intention.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to
It just
like
yeah,
do this for like the narrative. Like, but then again,
right.
like I also have this like love hate thing with it because like one of the things that like really bothers me about how like the LGBT community is portrayed in media is like it's got to be like the key factor of their character. It's got to sum up their entire
Yeah.
identity.
And
Whereas
or
like,
it's very sexualized.
yeah, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, can't they just be like gay the way that like straight people are straight?
Or
Like it
straight.
doesn't
Yeah,
have to be like a huge part of like their like character, and it just kind of
right.
seems like that's the way that this movie embraced it because like when you think about Linda in the grand scheme of things, like she's like no longer the best friend, like she spends more of the time as like the lesbian character, and it
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of does her character dirty in the long run.
No, yeah. No, yeah, totally. Um totally. Yeah, it just yeah. I don't know. That whole thing was it was pointless to me because it was just like I guess it was there to like arise some sort of suspicion, but then it didn't matter when the person that she was having sex with wasn't the husband, it didn't matter. Automatically, like there wouldn't have been any suspicion. I can talk. I don't know. It was just dumb.
I genuinely thought that it was gonna be Brian. I was like, okay,
Same.
cool, cool, cool.
Yeah,
Like
that would have been
we're
like a development.
yeah, we're going hand in hand for this like this trope. Like, okay,
Yeah,
we're already here doing this Lifetime movie. Like, why not embrace it? But
totally.
like the whole thing about like her, like I just didn't also understand like why she never like just flat out said that like it was Linda. Like she was very secretive about it, but like she was very intentional that
Yeah,
Gershon's character caught her in the act. Like the two just like didn't make sense to me.
yeah. I don't know. Again, the movie, like, the story wasn't terrible, but like a lot of the plot points and like dialogue, not good. Not good at all.
Yeah, so the thing about this movie is like I think you're absolutely correct is that like a movie can be excellent in concept and have
Sure.
terrible execution and
Right.
vice versa. This movie is the former. It has
Right.
a great I've seen movies that have taken very similar stories that they're telling, and somehow along the way, like this just ends up being just a really, really crappy movie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it runs on too long and like narratives
Dude.
are. It's
Bad.
never something that I complain about unless this movie like doesn't grasp me. And there are so many times where I'm like, this movie could have ended here, could have ended here. This could have been cut. This could
Yeah.
have like
Yeah.
what? Why is this like
No, dude,
in the narrative?
I was almost an hour. I was halfway through the movie going, what else are they gonna do now? Like they told the majority of the story up to
Yes.
halfway through the movie.
There's a point at like the hour mark where he's in the Gina Gershon's character is in the kitchen. She's like making breakfast. And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, cool. Like we're almost done. Lo and behold, nope, you still have 45 minutes late. And this is not one of those movies that like takes its time with the credits. No, they're like, we only need 3 minutes to really thank all the people who were involved in this movie. We're gonna do this 100-minute movie. And I was like, why? This movie literally could have been 75 minutes and been
totally.
way more efficient.
Yeah. Efficient at least, maybe not effective. Um maybe not effective. But
Facts.
there were some parts that I did think were kind of effective. Like there were some flashback scenes that gave you kind of more in-depth look at like Katie's character and like what exactly had happened. Didn't quite make things more sense. It didn't quite help make things make more sense because like this is a real world movie. It's not a fantasy movie. This woman is not just like traipsing through the US getting away with several murders like it's nothing. Changing her contacts and her dyeing her hair like that's going to make the biggest difference. You're kidding me.
Hey, Clark Kent puts on glasses and you're not supposed to believe he's Superman. Like,
No, Clark Kent changes his voice. Clark Kent changes his hair. Clark Kent changes the way that he walks and dresses. You should look up the Superman. Just this is off topic, but you brought this up. Um,
yes.
if you like Google like Zoe Deschanel Clark Kent,
Oh, I've seen that.
dude, so good.
Yeah,
As a
it's
Superman fan, I felt so affirmed.
I will go ahead and post that to the Victims and Villains Instagram. So you guys can see it shortly after this. But yeah, it's just go follow us. It's Victims and Villains on Instagram. Yeah, I was like, dude, dude, oh my God. One of the things that frustrated me so much in this is I love independent movies, and
Okay.
I have seen quite a lot that have excellent costuming.
Mhm.
Dude, the
The
the wigs
wigs.
in this movie were
Oh,
so bad. Like,
I know.
why?
I know. So freaking bad.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm,
or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Like, dude, all it takes is filming at different times and hair dye. That's all that it takes. Like,
All like every time like they would do a flashback with her character, with Nikki, I was always like, why does this look so like it's just so painfully like it's like it feels like it chills like right in the middle of her forehead. You can
yeah,
kind of like see the seams, and I'm like,
you can like see her her part like like the
yeah,
top.
I'm
It's just
like,
bad.
dude, like I understand like budgetary restraints, but it's not that hard. Like I've
Yeah,
seen movies that were probably made cheaper than
yeah,
this
yeah,
and like come across like looking better.
yeah. Also, like, I don't know. I come at movies for their budget all the time because I'm just like, you didn't have to spend this much money on this actor when you could have gotten somebody less expensive and spent more money here. You didn't have to spend this much money on, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter, like, and then people want to badmouth CGI. It's just like, it's not that the CGI was bad, it's that their budgetary team was bad. Don't come at the CGI. They didn't budget well. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I I really wish that I was able to find the budget on this. It's always harder to find budgets on direct to video movies.
Hmm.
Um, but I tell you what I can give you.
Sure.
Can give you another trivia fact.
Mm.
So this is the first time in 20 years that Nicolas Cage and Gina Gershon have shared the screen. Would you like to guess their previous collaboration?
Oh man, I looked it up because I was doing some research into all like a lot of the tertiary characters. And Cage has shared the screen with her and with Katie, the woman who played Katie as well. I cannot remember. So the woman who played Katie was in Left Behind, 2014's Left Behind. I
Which we
cannot
have not covered yet.
We have not covered yet. I do not remember what he was in with Gina Gershon.
Give me 1 second. I gotta go grab a visual.
A visual. Are you going to edit out this time in the podcast?
For all of the for all of my millennial listeners, this is what we call a laser disc. 1997's Face Off.
Nice.
There she is right there.
Sick. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they played lovers in that movie too.
Oh, all right.
So this is like the
Huh.
Elseworld of their characters.
Oh no. Oh
But I
God.
did find a budget for this movie. Do you want to take a guess?
I'm gonna aim high because I'm gonna say like 50 mil.
With a wig that bad?
It's more than a mil. They had to pay all the actors. Okay, 20 million.
You're closer. It's 12.8 million. I would love to know like where the budget on this movie
Probably
actually went
production
to.
quality. It had to have been production quality. The movie is pretty.
Uh, hold on. I'm gonna look something else.
I had never heard of this, but it's got to be between the actors and actresses they got. Well, actor and actresses, and the production quality.
Yeah, because I was also gonna say the male nurse friend that they have that does the DNA test.
Yeah.
He is actually also the director of this movie.
Okay. So they kind of
Yeah, so I was kind of curious because we keep comparing this to Lifetime, and I've seen Lifetime movies that look very similar to the cinematography in this movie.
right.
The average Lifetime movie costs what it costs to make is between 1.2 and 1.5 million dollars.
Yeah, so it had to have been cast. Had to have been. Because Cage's mom's character plays Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. Like she's been an actress for a long time. She's not a nobody.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway has done a lot of freaking movies. Like she is pretty sure she's done like has an Oscar nod, but I know Gershon and Nicolas Cage definitely do.
Yeah.
Cage is also a winner. All right. I have only 4 more trivia facts for you real quick. So,
all right, well, do you want to say anything else definitely about this movie? I was pleasantly surprised with the way that it ended. Pleasantly satisfied. I don't know how to say this that makes it sound okay, but like I'm not giving the movie actual praise. I think they did a good job tying up the story that they wrote the best way that they could have.
yeah, I will say that. I think that's probably a better way to put it. So Chloe King is the writer on this. I think she did a good job in terms of like closing the story out. The journey to that ending is like,
dude, oh my gosh, okay, this is spoilers. It doesn't matter. Don't watch the movie or do. I don't care. There's one point where like freaking the Katie woman who's the antagonist, if you will, in this film, is pregnant with their baby. And it was her last egg. And she stabs herself, or she makes Gina Gershon's character stab her in the belly with a knife. And that baby gets born just fine.
Yeah,
I have no patience for that crap. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Also, like, I would really be like interested to kind of like know a little bit about her, because like it's portrayed as like she has a mental condition, which I feel like the film didn't handle super well. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Calling all cosplayers and photographers in the vibrant cosplay universe. Are you ready to take the spotlight and be featured in the hottest cosplay magazine around? Look no further than Creative Cosplays Magazine. Dive into a world of creativity, inspiration, and jaw-dropping artistry. We celebrate you, the heroes behind the costumes, and the magicians behind the lens. Join our community at creativecosplays.com and follow us on Instagram at creative.cosplays and at creativecosplaysmag for all the latest updates. Your passion, your art, it deserves to shine. Don't miss your chance to be a part of the next epic issue. Submit your best work and let your creativity roar. Creative Cosplays Magazine, where imagination meets the page. Join us today. Creative Cosplays Magazine. Be legendary. Be creative. Be you.
No, but it's obvious, but they didn't really get to it.
Yeah, they don't like ever explain it. Like they just kind of like do the cliche like, oh, she's crazy.
Yeah. At the end, they show her in a padded cell. That's it. That's their solution to that.
Like I really like, as somebody that does a mental health podcast and has founded a nonprofit for mental health, it's the way that mental health is portrayed in this movie is very like surface. It is very frustrating to me. I feel like I feel like for this being a 2017 movie, it feels like for all the progress we've made for mental health up to 2017, this movie feels like 2 steps back.
Totally.
Also, the average woman, I'm just gonna read this quote, so I was curious about this. So, quote from Google, a female typically has around 300,000 to 500,000 eggs when puberty begins and rapidly loses eggs each month. So aside from their monthly cycles, many factors affect how many eggs a person loses every cycle. So this probably like 30 or so is when how old she is in this movie. I would have loved an exploration of like that journey for her character, because it definitely seemed like it affected her mentally, and it would have been a way more compelling movie to watch and to talk about.
Yeah, totally.
So, all right, let's jump into some trivia. So originally, Lindsay Lohan was actually set to star in this movie.
Star?
Like
instead of Gina Gershon's character?
I would say that if she was gonna play anything, she would probably play Nikki Whalen's character, who played Katie in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
But she was ultimately replaced. It doesn't say who she was replaced by. On September 14th, 2016, director Jonathan Baker tweeted, Lindsay Lohan, I fought for her to the very end. Sadly, the studio has the final say, and they did not want to go in that direction. Would this movie have been differently had Lindsay Lohan been in this movie?
Would have been more interesting, I guess.
I feel like Lindsay could probably has a lot more range to play a character like Katie.
Sure.
Would probably bring a lot more like nuance to her.
Yeah. Probably it was just too expensive.
Probably. I will also say that I've never seen Whelan in anything else. So this is kind of my introduction, and she doesn't exactly like wow me right out. It's just like stereotypical, like I've seen other women play the same exact part.
Sure. Yeah.
Inconceivable was delayed numerous times and had not finished pre-production stages by the time of its planned initial release date. Would have loved to know what that initial release date was.
Wow.
So
maybe that's why, like you were saying, you kind of felt this movie is like behind the times in a couple areas. That could have been why.
It's possible, but it would probably also is probably why the budget is so high. Because it's probably one of those things that like it was a set budget. Times just kept getting pushed back. Some more money was kind of thrown at it, and ultimately they're like, direct to video. We'll forget about it.
Yeah.
So it was announced that Lindsay Lohan would star in this movie at the star and produce this movie at the Sundance Film Festival. And my last trivia fact is not only is have Nicolas Cage and Nikki Whelan worked together before. In 2014's Left Behind, which we have not covered yet, but also 2016's Dog Eat Dog,
Oh, okay, cool.
which we have also not covered. So,
Sure. Yep.
last thing, I think we both know how we feel. Is Inconceivable worthy of high praise?
No, it's not. It's not worthy of high praise. It's not a good movie. I mean, it was. Does Cage have worse movies? In varying ways, sure. Um, I was more compelled than I think I expected to be, but that doesn't really speak to the quality of the movie itself, more just the fact that the story they were telling wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I also will say that this is not worthy of high praise and would actually recommend checking out almost 90% of any movie produced by Lifetime over this movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I grew up watching these movies with my mom, and always, always they were fine. But yeah, Inconceivable, excellent concept, terrible execution. Not a
yeah,
lot of Nick Cage.
yeah,
Sad face. So,
yeah, very true.
but that is gonna do it for us on this episode. But where can people find you online, sir?
Yeah. You can find me on the interwebs. At You can find me on YouTube. At VHZest. You can find me on TikTok at VHZest2, just the number 2. You can find me on Letterboxd, which I'm on right now, also at VHZest. So yeah, come follow me, watch me play my little bass videos on the internet, and talk about movies. Or you can just tell me I'm wrong. That's fine.
You just write one word sentence and he'll tell you how much he loves it, like I did about Mutant Mayhem.
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite review you've ever done,
I'll
which is
never look
probably
at
kind of
milking the
insulting. I'm
same.
sorry.
Every once in a while, I have like funny quips about movies that I can throw out there, but
Yeah.
you guys likewise could also find me on Letterboxd. I am on I'm at Captain Nostalgia. You guys can follow my other podcast, Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast, wherever you guys get your podcast from, alongside That's High Praise. You guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, uh, Patreon, and of course, wherever you guys get your podcast from. The next episode that we're going to be doing is actually going to be a live episode. Victims and Villains is doing our 24-hour fundraising stream that you guys can join us for. We're going to be going on at 9 p.m. Friday, September 15th, to talk about whoever has won our poll. We're leaving it to you guys. Are we doing Con Air? Are we doing National Treasure? You guys let us know what movie you guys want us to cover. We're going to watch it with you guys on the Discord on the evening of September 14th. So make sure you guys come in and hang out, talk about Nicolas Cage in the 90s and the early 2000s. So until next time, remember to keep on caging.
That's right.